Good evening, everybody. I hope that you are well, and I hope that you are having an enjoyable evening if you're watching this in the United States, or that you are having a good day if you're somewhere else in the world. I've just been away for the afternoon and just come back to my desk, and as is often the case when I'm away from my desk, breaking news stories happen. And so this is a live stream to address that breaking news story. In fact, I didn't know anything about it until I looked at Tesla's share price. Now, I get a notification for Tesla share prices, and when I got back to the house, I got a notification that Tesla's share price had dropped by 4.39%. It actually did worse than the rest of the stock market today, slightly, not hugely. And Tesla has been trading downwards lately. Some people have said it's just a stock adjustment. Some people have just said it's just the way the stock market operates. I'm not a stock expert, so I'm not going to comment on that. But normally when Tesla stock takes a tumble, it's because of something that happens. And today, I found out pretty quickly what that was. An accident that happened on the 11th of March in Detroit involving a Tesla Model Y. It happened very early in the morning in Detroit, 3:20 in the morning. So bear that in mind for later on in this video. And a Tesla Model Y ran sideways into a semi, or rather, it ran into the truck sideways. So the car came in and impacted the trailer unit and went underneath. Now, this is the kind of crash that is sadly fairly common in the United States. And it's not unusual for Teslas. We've now seen a couple of Teslas that have had this issue. What is going to be causing a lot of a ruckus in the news, and why we're making this video right now, is because the vehicle is claimed to have had Autopilot activated at the time of the collision. I don't want to report incorrect information, though. So I'm actually going to pull up one of the news stories that I had on the matter, and hopefully we can get to the bottom of this and we can be ready to have a discussion about what is likely to happen next, and also discuss some of the things that I think it's important to remember when discussing the Tesla Autopilot system. Okay, so obviously last week, in fact, there was a violent crash that occurred on March 11th in Detroit involving a Tesla and a tractor trailer. This is a statement from NTSB. It has launched a special crash investigation team to investigate the crash. Now, this is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. It is apparently aware of the incident, and the NTSB has launched an investigation into this accident. So some people are going to say it's NHTSA. It's not directly NHTSA. It's the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, which is a completely different but related organization within the federal government. Its job is to investigate accidents and to figure out why that accident happened, as opposed to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which is designed to try and make sure that our vehicles are safe, our roads are safe, all of the regulations that keep us safe on the road are sensible, and that vehicles meet crash safety standards, etc., and road test standards in general. As we mentioned in a previous video, NHTSA doesn't actually crash test every vehicle that comes. It's a bit nebulous. The automaker has to certify that their vehicles meet whatever safety standards exist. I think that's how it works for the auto industry. So anyway, there was this accident on the 11th of March. It happened very early in the morning, and there is now an investigation into it. The driver has been charged. I'm not entirely sure what the charges were at this point, but they have been charged Let me bring that page up because it's gone missing. Here we go. I'm going to bring this up for you. This is according to the Detroit Free Press. Detroit Free Press even. The Detroit police said in a statement that a white Tesla drove through an intersection in the area of Waterman and Fort around 3:20 a.m. on Thursday last week, struck the trailer and became wedged beneath it. Both the driver and the passenger were taken to a local hospital. The woman was in a critical condition Thursday, while the driver's condition was not immediately known. Police said that they had, started that investigation and it was preliminary. The Detroit police sergeant has now said, one of the Detroit police sergeants, Nicole Kirkwood, according to the Detroit Free Press, said that it wasn't clear if the Tesla was using Autopilot or any other kind of autonomous feature. The actual report says she could not say if the Tesla driver was using the company's Autopilot or full self-driving software. It is still under investigation. As far as I am aware, Tesla has not said, because Tesla doesn't have a press team anymore. So trying to get hold of Tesla to clear up a situation like this is always particularly difficult. So where does this leave us? Well, right now, it leaves us in a potential situation where the mainstream media especially are going to be discussing how safe semi-autonomous driver assistance features are in all vehicles, but obviously primarily Teslas. And as part of that, we can expect there to be some significant kickback towards anyone who's working with or working on autonomous vehicles. Now, there are some important things to remember. And the reason why I'm holding this video now, the reason why I'm making this video is that I think it's really important if your colleagues at work or friends and family talk to you about this incident. It's very easy if you are a fan of Tesla or you are a fan of electric vehicles or you are a fan of autonomous vehicles to jump to a certain set of conclusions, to accuse the press of I can't even say it. Sensationalism. I worked 16 hours yesterday, so please forgive me. It's important that we don't over-sensationalize this particular story, but it's also important to ask what happened, why did it happen, what was happening before the accident, if there was any kind of autonomous safety feature involved, why didn't the vehicle act? Or maybe it did act, but it didn't act soon enough. What was the driver's role in this? And finally, how can we make sure this doesn't happen again? Now, there is a complete different field here talking about how Autopilot is sold, how Autopilot is viewed, how semi-autonomous driver assistance systems are sold and marketed, and also how the general population views semi-autonomous driver assistance systems. And I'm going to come to that in a bit. First, however, I think it's really important to note here that NHTSA had sent a letter on February 1st to the government talking about crash test standards or safety standards for autonomous vehicles. NHTSA has been worried about the proliferation of semi-autonomous driver assistance features for many years. And I think the more high-profile accidents that occur, the longer it takes for semi-autonomous driver assistance features to gain trust in the wider population. And I'm not talking about people who own Teslas, because I think most people who own Teslas, most of the sane people, I think, understand that this is technology that is very useful, that can actually help you be a safer driver, but it relies on you being the driver. It relies on you being attentive, you paying attention, and you being the person to step in and go, no, car, that's not what you're supposed to do. With an attentive driver, one that is engaged, one that is informed about the system, one that knows when the system is functioning and when it is not functioning, Autopilot can actually improve safety. Tesla has data to back this up. There are fewer accidents involving cars that have Autopilot systems engaged per however many miles driven versus your standard regular vehicle. And while I don't believe there's much in the way of statistics comparing other semi-autonomous driver assistance features like Cadillac's Super Cruise or the Nissan ProPilot, I would wager that there are similar statistics for those companies too. They just don't talk about them very much. They don't talk about them in the same way. Now, the term autopilot, if you are an aviation buff, you are maybe actually a pilot, you will understand the term autopilot doesn't mean that this is completely hands-off and you can, drink and use your mobile phone and do all those other things. It's a computer system that is designed to help you stay safe on the road. It's a system that's designed in aircraft to help you stay safe in the air, to ensure that you are operating within a certain set parameters, whether it's keeping a certain altitude, keeping a certain heading, keeping a certain speed. And when you're on the road, it's the same kind of thing, ensuring that you are in the correct lane, you are driving in the right direction, you are obeying the speed limits, or hopefully obeying the speed that the vehicle was set to by you. I know you can get Autopilot to drive faster than the speed limit, but it ultimately falls back to that one person, the person behind the yoke in the plane, the person behind the wheel in the car. And if you expect that fully autonomous functionality, you're going to have a really nasty wake-up call. The problem, though, is the use of auto. The name auto in that autopilot name, or full self-driving, as we see bandied around again and again and again on YouTube, in forums, Twitter, we see people regularly talk about how awesome autopilot is, how full self-driving is great, and how cars can drive themselves. Now, there is a bit of a disconnect here, because the majority of people, as I understand it, who are actually enrolled in Tesla's full self-driving beta program are people who actually don't post a whole lot of videos about it. They don't need to post a whole lot of videos about it because it's just a functionality that they are testing for Tesla, and they understand that this is essentially pre-production software that they are testing. It's beta software. And so it's not perfect. And you have to approach those softwares with the same kind of mindset that you would approach any other beta software. Tesla covers its arse, as it were, with announcements and agreements that are embedded into that software that you have to say, yeah, okay, I accept those terms and conditions. It would be the same as me running a beta software of macOS on my editing machine here. I've got an iMac Pro that we use here in the studio. It does all of the editing. It would be like me downloading a developer copy of the latest macOS, running it on my mission critical edit machine that I need to use every single day, and then complain when a particular program breaks or a particular issue rears its ugly head. And the only time we actually install beta software to test it out is if there is a problem with the existing software, and we've been assured that, I don't know, maybe it's a driver update, or maybe it's some other feature has fixed whatever the problem was and allows us to get on with our day. But even then, we have in the back of our mind, okay, this is kind of prototype software or engineering test software. We need to make sure that we keep an eye on it, we keep regular backups. And when you're driving with a full self-driving beta program, you also have to be cognizant of the fact that this is a test feature. It is not a full self-driving. It is not full availability to everybody yet. And I know Elon Musk recently tweeted, we're going to expand the Autopilot beta software to have more people in the program. It's not clear if this person was a recent signer up to it or not. As I said earlier, it's not even clear if this person had Autopilot enabled. So let's take a step back. Let's breathe. And let's try and figure out where we go from here. If you've watched this channel for any length of time, you'll know my feelings on autonomous vehicle technology. I think autonomous and semi-autonomous driver assistance features are fantastic. They can save lives. They can be really useful. I was once driving in Scotland with radar-assisted cruise control, and it actually saved my life because there was an accident up ahead. I couldn't see that there was an accident up ahead. I was driving with a decent amount of space between me and the car in front because of heavy fog. I was traveling at a reduced speed limit, but I had my car with its active safety features on. It was a press that I'd borrowed from Volvo. We were going on holiday in Scotland, and there was a major accident. And my car stopped because the car in front had seen it and stopped. And I stopped with plenty of time. Now, had I just been relying on my own senses, I probably would have slammed the brakes on and still stopped because I was keeping a safe distance. But I know that system, because it could see through that fog, stopped ahead of time. Now, of course, Tesla doesn't use LiDAR. It uses visual sensors. So I don't know if the Tesla system would have worked in that situation. But at the same point, we have to acknowledge that those systems are safer for us when we use them appropriately. And the problem is that we humans are lazy. We will use whatever we want to use to make life easiest for ourselves, whether that is the robotic vacuum cleaner that I have downstairs that goes around my lounge every evening at about 11 p.m. at night so that I don't have to vacuum the house as much because the robot does it for me. Whether it's cruise control, which is seriously a lazy person's thing, right? The car keeps itself at a certain speed. We don't have to touch the go pedal. We don't have to touch the brake pedal. The car takes care of that all for us. And then lane keep assist, a same thing. It keeps us in our lane in case we are tired, in case we are not paying full attention to the road ahead. But as vehicles become more and more automated, as those semi-autonomous driver assistance features become ever closer to the uncanny valley of convincing you that the car is as good as you are at driving, then we are going to get to a point where more and more people will over-rely on these systems, and we will see accidents occur. Not because the systems are incompetent, not because the systems do not do what the manufacturers claim of them, but because we humans abuse the system. So we have a situation where if you have lane keep assist and then you have radar assisted cruise control and you have those two things operating at the same time, the car can give a pretty competent impression that it is driving itself, right? It's making sure that the car in front is a set distance away and it's keeping up with that car or whatever your set speed limit is, whatever you've asked the car to drive. And as long as it can see those lane markings, it will keep you in the middle of the road. Now, some of those systems require you to have your hands on the wheel at all times. Some of those systems require you to touch the wheel every so often. Kia's system, I once drove, I think, probably about 3 miles without touching the steering wheel with Kia's system in the Kia e-Niro when I had it on loan. Now, I was paying attention. I was reviewing the car and I was paying attention and I was looking at the road ahead. But I realized how all too easy it is to lose concentration when you're not actively engaged in the process of driving, and when you lull yourself into a false sense of security that you yourself do not need to pay attention because everything is happening for you. And it is human nature, sadly. I want all of you to think about a moment where a lapse in concentration caused you to do something really stupid. I once nearly burnt my kitchen down because I wasn't paying attention. Oil caught fire in my kitchen, and it caught fire because I wasn't paying 100% attention to it. Luckily, nothing bad happened. I've seen people crash cars, roll cars over. In fact, up here in rural Oregon, I live off a little, regular rural road with one lane in each direction. Most of this road has got a double yellow down the middle, which in America means do not pass, because it's a twisty hill road. Somebody rolled a car over earlier this week. I suspect they rolled a car over because they weren't paying full attention to the road ahead. Maybe they were tired. Maybe they were exhausted. Maybe they were impaired in some other way. Maybe they were distracted. They rolled their car over and ended up having to go to hospital. Somebody hit our mailbox about 2 months ago for the same reason. Person was driving past our house, took our mailbox out, and told us, there was some of the local wildlife. I can't remember if it was a bobcat or a mountain lion. I think she said it was a mountain lion. She saw a mountain lion running across the road, and so she hit our mailbox. Now, unbeknownst to her, cameras, and so we went back and looked at the footage, and there's no anywhere in the shot, and it was clear that she was just distracted. And the next day, to prove it, when I was driving back to my house, I was driving along the road. There is a curve about, 10, 20 yards further up the road. It's very gentle. As I came around that corner, I accelerated a little bit. I kept the steering lock exactly where it needed to be to come around the corner. And the road is just about wide enough that as long as you've got the steering wheel just right, as you come around that corner, if you don't correct, you hit our mailbox. That's what happened. And it's cool. We didn't cause a fuss. We just replaced our mailbox. We didn't ask for any money or anything. That's not the point. You have to work in concert with your car at the moment, because there's no automaker anywhere that is doing level 5 fully autonomous driving. And if they really did offer that, then our cars would be driving around with nobody in them. They'd be going to pick up things for us. They'd be taking drunk people home. We wouldn't have any drunk drivers anymore if autonomous vehicles, level 5 autonomous vehicles, were really that easy to make. But they're not, because of edge case use scenarios and all of these other things. So there are some issues out there. We don't know if this crash on the 11th actually involved autopilot or not. I would surmise at 3:20 a.m., unless the person who crashed the car was a night shift worker used to working at night, the chances are their serotonin levels and everything else meant that they probably shouldn't be driving at that time of night. I have a medical condition. I know that come 8 or 9 in the evening, I am not safe to drive, and therefore I do not drive at that point. I have to drive down to California in a couple of weeks, and I will make sure I'm driving on my own. I will make sure that come that time in the evening, wherever I am, I'll find a hotel room and check in for the night, because beyond that point, I'm not safe on the road. At 3:20 in the morning, I would suggest that person's reactions were probably pretty poor. And even if autopilot was engaged at that point, I suspect that there just wasn't enough time to react, either by the human or by the autopilot system. And that's really tragic, and it's really sad. But when discussing this accident, and when discussing is autopilot safe, is semi-autonomous driver assistance safe, the answer is yes, but. And the big but here is the person behind the wheel. And that's ultimately, I think, all we have to say on this. I think that's all we have to remember on this. Now, Should we be allowing Autopilot on the road? Should we be allowing Super Cruise on the road and all of these other systems without a legal framework on which those systems are hung? Personally, I don't believe so. I believe Tesla, GM, and all of these other automakers that are working on advanced level 2, level 3, and beyond autopilot systems or autopilot-like systems. See, even I've got it wrong. We should be having a standardized mode of operation for all of these vehicles. It could be something as simple as all of the cars have to have a rear-facing camera to make sure that the driver is paying attention. To make sure, as Chris just said, is there an accreditation model which can be applied to driver assistance age yet? Not to my knowledge. And that's part of the problem. Tesla is operating, as are all of these other companies, in a wild west. Now, some of that is a political wild west. You know, under the last US president, the idea of developing a standardized framework for autonomous vehicles probably wasn't at the top of the list. I don't know if that will change under the new administration, but I think it is an essential requirement. I think that NHTSA's reaction to ask all autonomous vehicles to, not be allowed might be a backward step. But at the same point, I think we have to agree, we have to acknowledge that there are problems. So in a February 1st letter to the Department of Transportation, which includes NHTSA, so I misreported it earlier, NTSB Chairman Robert Sumwalt urged the agency to enact regulations governing driver assistance systems as well as testing of autonomous vehicles. This is according to the Detroit Free Press. NHTSA has relied mainly on voluntary guidelines for the vehicles, taking a hands-off approach so it won't hinder any development of new safety technology. Now, frankly, that is the wrong attitude. And I think NTSB is right to be concerned about that. Clarification. I'm sorry that I said NHTSA earlier. As I said, those are two separate agencies with similar names and they work in a similar setup. Now, someone is saying, so you would be perfect, but it was better than most human drivers. The problem, John, is not that the system is not perfect. The problem is that we are not perfect. And whenever you have an autonomous driver assistance system that interfaces with a human, there be problems. Planes still crash with autopilot on board. And if you are a fan of Air Crash Investigation or any of those other channels and shows that talks about tragic airplane disasters, it's very often not a mechanical failure in the autopilot system that causes problems, but rather the human interaction with that system. People in panic situations do silly things. People who are tired, people who are stressed, people who have not eaten, who've got low blood sugar, they all make poor judgments. And at the end of the day, very often the systems will do what they are asked to do. And in the case of this collision, if Autopilot did not detect the vehicle, which is something that we know has happened before. There's been 2 or 3 previous incidences where a Tesla in autopilot mode, earlier autopilot iterations, I want to say, was involved in an accident. In one case, someone was killed very tragically. And in that case, it was found that the driver was not paying attention. The autopilot system did not detect the truck until it was too late. And there you have it, which comes straight back to my point of it's a human error problem, but it's also a regulatory problem. And we have to see a development and a framework. And I think it's time for Tesla to step up to that plate. And I think we need everyone to be honest about this rather than say it was a hatchet job. Someone's trying to blame autopilot. We need to say, okay, maybe if this person is found out to have been using autopilot, they clearly weren't following Tesla's guidance. Thank you to Electric Cars Are Cool. I've not been talking to the chat room very much. He said Tesla does use the rear-facing camera now to monitor drivers in the FSD beta. Of course, that's only vehicles that have the rear-facing camera. So the new Model S, Model X, Model 3, and Model Ys have them, but older Model S and Model Xs don't, as far as I'm aware. They recently removed drivers in the beta who did not pay attention. And that is the kind of thing that Tesla needs to be doing. But at the same point, Tesla needs to be working with regulators to make sure that there is a framework that says if your car detects that you are not paying attention, then these things happen. If there is an issue with the system, this warning is issued, and therefore we know what's happening. If you don't live in the United States and you come to the US, not that any of you, if you don't live here, will be able to do that right now because COVID, but if you were to come to the US and you were to jump in a hire car, the first thing that you might notice, irritatingly, is that the car makes a lot of noise. It bings if the door is open and the key is in the ignition, it makes a noise. It makes a noise if the lights are on and the door is open, or it makes a noise if the seat belts are not on, or it makes a noise if any other set of conditions are met. It makes an audible warning sound. They're irritating. But those warning sounds are designed to condition drivers to follow safe practices, to make sure that when they get in the car, they close the door before they turn the vehicle on. Otherwise, it will beep at you. To make sure that your foot is on the brake before you turn the vehicle on. Otherwise, the car will beep at you. And as someone said, Tesla will stop you from using the autopilot system the third time you aren't paying attention, which is how it should be, right? But we need a standardized message system. I myself have been in a Tesla. I've been driving a Tesla with autopilot engaged. And then for some reason, autopilot has disengaged. I've had the radio up pretty loud, so I didn't hear that the system disengaged. Maybe I wasn't paying attention. Maybe my audio was too loud. It didn't give me that feedback of, hey, you just lost autopilot. You're driving on your own. And it took me a while to realize, oh, autopilot's no longer helping me driving. I better, pay attention a bit more. And I don't mind admitting that. Now, if you talk about the forward active braking system, the ones where the car will brake for you, the lights will flash just in front of your field of view, behind the speedometer pod. Most cars with forward collision alert have that bright flashing red light that will activate if there is a need to brake, and it brakes. And it does that by going, hey, I need to brake. I'm warning you. It's red flashing lights. Red means danger. All is good. We need that kind of idiot-proof acknowledgement and signaling system for autonomous and semi-autonomous features. That's my personal opinion. You can be cross with me for this, or the screen is flashing red when it stops on newer versions, but I don't know if people are necessarily looking at that screen all the time. They might be looking out down the road. Maybe it's a human problem as well, right? I don't own a Tesla, so I can't be on top of all of the iterations. From those I know who are using the full self-driving beta, it has got a lot better. It has got a lot more competent, and it lets you know what's happening a lot more cleanly. So please don't feel that I am dissing Tesla, because if you go back, I haven't dissed Tesla in this. I've criticized the humans behind the wheel, and of course, I've called for a very important standardization between all vehicles. And that standardization means that autonomous driving and semi-autonomous driving is just another feature that everybody knows how to use. It's intuitive. Good example is indicators, right? Pretty much every car out there, you go up to go right, you go down to go left. Now, in Japan, things are slightly different, and it used to be very different. You know, British and Japanese cars used to have their indicator stalks on the other side. And sometimes you see indicator stalks in older cars that are a bit wacky and a bit weird, like they're a toggle switch or something. But for the majority of the automotive industry over the last 20 or 30 even years, the majority of cars, with the exception of a few Japanese K-Class and a few other weirdies, you have up to go right, down to go left. Doesn't matter whether the steering wheel is on the right-hand side of the car, in the middle of the car, or on the left. Your indicators are on the left, and you go down to go left and up to go right. And that's that kind of simple standardization that I believe we need so that anybody can make use of autonomous safety features or semi-autonomous driver assistance features. Everyone understands how it works. Everybody understands when the system is engaged, when it is not engaged. And I think at that point, we will start to see less instances of people misusing the system. Let's go back to planes for a second. I'm not a pilot. I wish I was. I'm unlikely to get a pilot's license now because I have a medical condition that means that I probably wouldn't pass the physical. But as I understand it, if you're a commercial pilot and you are flying people commercially, you have to be certified to use a particular type of plane. You have to go through training so that you understand where all the gauges are, so that you understand what to do when things go wrong, so that you understand how to operate all of the equipment. Now, in an emergency, if you are on a flight and the pilot drops down dead and you are a surviving pilot who can rush to the cockpit and help the co-pilot down the plane, maybe you don't necessarily have to have specific training because the basic controls are the same, right? They either have they have pedals and they either have a joystick or they have a yoke. They all operate in a similar manner, but the intricacies of each plane are subtly different and different enough that if you are flying commercially, you have to certify on that particular make and model of planes. We can't do that in the automotive world. I mean, imagine having to take a test every time you bought a new car. That would be crazy. So the alternative way is standardization. And that's why I'm an advocate for standardization in the automotive industry. And I think the NTSB is correct to be worried about this. I think NHTSA needs to step up to the plate. I think the federal government as a whole needs to step up to the plate. I think the same is true in Europe. The same is true in Asia and other countries. Simplification. Make it familiar for everybody to use, encourage everybody to learn to use those systems, and also implement it in the driving tests. Because a trained person who understands that this system is not 100% right now is less likely to fall into the trap of believing it is competent. If it's making you believe that it's competent, and you've don't really understand how the system works, you don't really understand when it's on or when it's off, you're more likely to believe that the car is amazing and wonderful and always doing everything right. Whereas if you're looking at this with a more critical way, if you've got more training and you've got more understanding of how things work, then you're less likely to have an issue. Chris said we did this in 1972, I believe, with motorcycles. And again, in the United Kingdom, when my dad learned to ride a motorcycle and he took his motorcycle test, it literally involved him getting on the motorcycle, riding around the block, the examiner standing out in the middle of the road and going, "Stop," and my dad not knocking him over, right? That was literally your motorcycle test. By the time I took my motorcycle test, and I took my motorcycle test in my late 20s. Yeah, late 20s. I had to do a written exam. I had to do hazard perception, So written exam is knowledge test. They ask you multi-choice questions about road handling and things that might involve motorcycles as well as regular vehicles. I had to do a hazard perception check to make sure that I could be an aware road user. Then I had to go out into effectively a large parking lot and do a series of low speed maneuvers in this parking lot before I was even allowed on the road. And after that, only once I'd got to this point, then I actually stepped up to being allowed out on the road with the examiner and a motorcycle. In my case, I did what's called direct access because I was over a certain age. And at that point, they kind of go, you're probably mature enough to handle a 650cc motorbike. So sure, go nuts. You ride out with a motorcycle examiner. You have radio communication between you and them. They follow you. They are watching you the entire time. The test takes about an hour. And they make sure that you really understand how your motorbike works. They ask you to do a lot of maneuvers, lefts, rights, stops, roundabouts, all of this stuff. And only then are you actually allowed to have a license to go out on the road to ride a motorcycle. And I believe the statistics back up the fact that since the UK started implementing such strict rules for motorcyclists, the number of motorcyclists who end up in hospital or in a coffin due to an issue that they themselves caused, not paying attention, going around a corner too fast, losing control of the bike, have reduced dramatically. Because the motorcyclists are more informed, they understand how motorbikes work. You have to know what the difference is between a high side and a low side. You have to know the difference between, being able to spot oil on the road, being able to understand that different road surfaces are going to cause different tractions. It's one of the reasons why I like the Fort 9 YouTube channel, because they go through all of that stuff that I myself trained in the UK to do. But when I came to the United States, I retook my motorcycle test because the UK and the US do not have a reciprocation agreement when it comes to licenses. So I had to retake my car test. I had to retake my motorbike test. And the motorbike test scared me witless. Here's the reason why. There were 10 people my day doing a test. Because I already knew how to ride, you had to go through an online quiz to prove that you knew the basics. Then you took a one-day course. They passed everybody. They passed everybody that day, including a guy who was riding a 125cc semi-automatic scooter, one that doesn't have a clutch, just has a gear lever on the handlebars. He was struggling to control that thing. And I remember looking at him from across the field with my helmet on going, oh my God. That day they passed me with no faults. They asked me to become an instructor because they felt I rode really well. The reality was I was one of a few people who actually got out of second gear and we weren't on the road. This was an issue, right, of training. They were passing people who did not go out of second gear, did not go above second gear. And after that, they went, okay, yeah, you can ride a motorbike. These people had never ridden a motorbike at 30, 40, 50, 60 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour. They didn't understand the difference between low speed braking and high speed braking. They didn't understand how to drag their rear brake with their foot when maneuvering in certain situations to get the bike back upright. They didn't understand how to do a swerve. In fact, when I did the swerve maneuver, several of the people that I was taking the test with thought I had failed because I swerved so severely that I clipped one of the cones with my foot as I went through. I really pushed the bike over. And this connects because we are failing Tesla owners. We are failing other people who use semi-autonomous driver assistance systems by going, hey, just go out and have fun. This is a great new fancy feature. It's called beta. That, by the way, is to protect our asses so we don't get into trouble because, you said, yes, okay, I understand, even though we know you don't. That is a major problem. We are allowing cars to go out. We're allowing beta testing to occur on the public highway, which I think is inherently dangerous. We are allowed, not necessarily because the testing part is dangerous, but because we are relying on people who may or may not have a particularly great grasp of how this system works. As far as I am aware, there is no test that you have to go through in order to have full self-driving beta enabled in your cars. And I would love Tesla to actually go, okay, we're going to turn off all of the full self-driving beta. And then you have to actually pass the test to prove to us that you know how it works. Now, you could take that test in your car. It'd be a web page, right? Multi-choice answers. I know how this system works. I know what I am supposed to do. If you prove that you understand how this system works, then fine, go ahead. Help us test this system. Help us make this better, because we know the chances of you getting in an accident using this system because you are using it badly. And ultimately, let's not face it, people who are not fully prepared to use its system and they get in, there's a lot of media attention. Who ultimately suffers? It's Tesla, right? So instead go, okay, you have to pass a test to prove that you know how the system works, which means you are less likely to do something stupid with it, which means we're less likely to get in trouble. Great. Someone says Autopilot is great when you're stuck in traffic. Yeah, it is. I love using Autopilot and other semi-autonomous driver assistance features when I am stuck in traffic. Always have. I love them. But in order for us to actually get to a point where we see full self-driving in the wider world, we need some kind of framework. We need some kind of acknowledgement that this is not ready for prime time yet. Maybe not because it's not safe, because I think it is pretty safe, but because people are not safe, because people do not understand how this system works, which leads us to the final point I want to make. We have a real issue. I want you guys to go to Shutterstock or some other stock photo site, and I want you to type in Tesla Autopilot, and I want you to see the images that come back. Do it now. I'm going to read the chat room. The premise of FSD is that you shouldn't need to know how it works. Yeah, but you should. Every plane pilot needs to know how their autopilot works, or they can be problems. Tesla can, but a short quiz at the end of the disclaimer can put a short quiz at the end of the disclaimer. Yeah, exactly. Go to Shutterstock or any other stock footage website, stock images, stock footage. I did this earlier because I was curious. I typed in Tesla Autopilot into the Shutterstock, shutterstock.com website. Every single image that came back shows somebody in a Tesla kind of leaning back, their hands off the wheel, maybe playing with their cell phone, maybe doing, sleeping, talking to someone else, drinking a coffee, whatever. The two things about that is the person's hands are not on the wheel and they are not paying attention to the road ahead. Now, you and I both know, I'm sure the majority of people who watch this channel are either Tesla owners or they know Tesla or something like that. Not one person is touching the steering wheel. Some of you guys are going to look at it. And yes, Garland, you're totally right. You do have to keep your hand on the wheel or touch the wheel to keep it activated. I know that. You know that. Shutterstock doesn't seem to know that, right? Can you see where I'm going with this? There's a difference between being correct and then what everybody else seems to assume. Not all of the pics are of a Tesla either. And I know, right? I understand this. You know this, right? I'm not trying to preach to people who own Teslas and use autopilot every day. You guys are not the problem. The problem is the general public's opinion of how this system works, right? This is a car that will do all the driving for you. That is what the general public, it's what the media, it's what a lot of people believe. You're making assumptions of the mother of F-ups. No, I'm not making assumptions. I'm saying that there is an image problem, right? There is an image problem. If people genuinely understood how autopilot worked, we wouldn't see those images. If people genuinely understood how this technology works, if you like stop someone in the street and said, "Tell me about Tesla Autopilot," I will guarantee you that unless they are a Tesla,
I will guarantee you.
There you go. She doesn't understand either. Even Siri doesn't understand. I will guarantee that if you ask the man or the woman in the street about Tesla Autopilot, if they do not have Teslas, they will go, "This car will drive itself." All right? And as Steve said, Shutterstock didn't upload the photos. These are uploaded by independent artists. But there are a lot of people who don't know about autopilot. There are a lot of people who don't care to know about autopilot. And finally, as demonstrated a couple of weeks ago, there are lots of people who have Teslas who don't take it seriously. They are a minority, thankfully. They are a minority. And Tesla is working really hard to weed out those idiots from the autopilot program, because Tesla has realized that allowing people to use its system who are not following the rules is bad for Tesla. But ultimately, people are abusing the system, and they're abusing the system because there's not a standard framework, because they don't understand how the system works, because of a stupid name that they think means that the car can do everything itself. Garland, I don't know what planet you're on, hun, but you are not on the same planet as the rest of us. People are not uploading pics to Shutterstock to give autopilot a bad name. People are uploading pics to Shutterstock because that's what they want autopilot to stand for. That's what they believe autopilot is. That's what people think. And we see on YouTube, we've seen on YouTube so many times, if you want to make a huge number of views on YouTube, put up an autopilot video. You're doing something silly with autopilot. Now, to the credit of the Tesla community, and again, I want to reiterate here, I'm not hating owners. I think the majority of Tesla owners who use full self-driving are wonderful, amazing people who understand the system and are, but they are jumping who are doing stupid things. John, if you get into an accident, that's what insurance is for, is a stupid, stupid thing to say. I'm sorry. When you take out, and I'm deadly serious about this, okay? Because I lost, my cousin died in a road traffic accident. When you get behind the wheel of a vehicle, doesn't matter what it is, 3/4 ton pickup truck, a bubble car, you are getting into a weapon. You are getting into a weapon that is capable of killing and maiming and injuring yourself and other people. And you have a duty as a citizen of wherever you happen to live to drive to the best of your ability. Autopilot is great. It gives you eyes where you do not have them. It gives you a second set of eyes, a backup brain which it can process and keep you safe. But right now, it's not ready for full autonomous driving. And no person should say you have insurance so that if you have an accident, you are fine. No, insurance is to help you cover the financial costs, nothing else. Because we all know that when you have insurance, your premium goes up if you have lots of accidents, right? So the idea about having insurance is you never have to use it. And if you are a safe driver, then you pay less for your insurance. Someone is saying that police are now saying that Autopilot is not believed to be in use in the Detroit Tesla crash. That is being talked about in this chat room. I have not been able to verify it. Maybe you could provide us a link to the original statement, and then I'll be able to do that. But ultimately, it boils down to the need for us to have better regulation for autonomous vehicles, better control of who uses it, and it should be part of the driving test. Should be part of the driving test. We are all getting behind the wheel of a weapon, and if we don't know how to use that weapon, we are in a lot of trouble. I once nearly came off a motorbike. It's a friend's bike. Nearly came off it, really nasty. Somehow I managed to keep it upright. But I came off it, or nearly came off it, because I was inexperienced. I'd just passed my test. I thought I knew everything. I tried to tuck it into a corner and it was in the wrong gear, and I, was in the wrong gear for exiting the corner. And I caused myself a lot of pain and suffering as a consequence. But when we assume that we don't need to pay attention to the road ahead, or we seem to say that we don't need to worry about how good full self-driving is, then we have a problem. And I would love to see FSD go through a driving test, and I would love to see humans go through driving tests for FSD. You want to have the car drive for you? Prove to me that you understand how the system works. Because I think that's honestly where we have this problem. It's an image problem. It's the Shutterstock images and everything else. So there we go. That's what's going on now. I'm sure someone will say that we're being terrible to Tesla, but I know that we haven't been in this video. Dan says, to teach my daughter to drive, people thought I was crazy for making her drive backwards for about half an hour. People should be able to do the basics. Thank you very much for that link. I will follow that link in a second. So yeah, Autopilot is not believed to be in use. And if that is the case, here we go. This is a Reuters report from David Shepherdson, who I know. All right. NHTSA investigators will meet with Detroit police later this week to review data from the vehicle's recorder. Tesla has not responded to comments, which doesn't seem to be a smart move personally. But they did say that the violent crash was autopilot mode at the time, citing statements showing some evasive maneuvers before the crash. Now, I don't know enough about how these work, because I know that Tesla's Autopilot has a passive safety or an active safety feature that even if you don't have Autopilot engaged, the car will still try and help you. So I think that may have been the issue. What is the threat of people who don't use FSD not knowing how it works? I'm only concerned about people who use it. Well, okay, so here we go. If you make full self-driving a really expensive feature like Tesla has done, and you make it a premium feature on cars, then it means that people who can afford a Tesla with full self-driving, then you have less, you have less problems. Dan has said cops say that the speed was the cause of the Detroit accident, and the driver was charged with reckless driving and driving on a suspended license. reported things like this: 850 collisions happened. One of them was a Tesla. Okay, look, there is a problem right now with the way that we talk about autopilot and the way we talk about accidents, but that's only going to change if we get rid of the idiots, if we make it harder for idiots to use autopilot. Because when people do silly things with autopilot and other autonomous systems, that emboldens them to do more and more. Like that silly kid who frankly shouldn't even have had a Tesla at 18, who got his mum to film him in the back of the car and letting the car drive for him. That was not responsible. No way, no how. And he was doing it for the attention. Someone like that should not be allowed to drive, let alone drive something like a Tesla, which is a very powerful car. So I know people are jumping into this stream now who are going, oh, you're trying to tell us Tesla's are rubbish and Tesla's at fault. No, it's not. It's the regulations. It's the conversation that we need to have about autonomous safety systems. And it's driver training. There's a video going around on YouTube right now, and I know TrueTech, you might be able to understand, might know the link. There's, I think it's the Bikes and Beards YouTube channel, if memory serves rightly, who did a couple of undercover tests to see if motorcycle stores would sell a stupidly overpowerful, top of the range race spec motorcycle to someone who said they hadn't yet even passed their test. And in this instance, apparently both of the motorcycle showrooms went, yeah, no, you're not buying this because you clearly don't know how to use it. That's what I'm asking people to do. It needs to be you don't understand how full self-driving works. Therefore, you shouldn't be driving a car with full self-driving. Do you think that Tesla naming things like ludicrous mode and plaid also fosters irresponsible behavior? Yeah, I think it's the laddish behavior, which goes, hand in hand with Elon's godlike status among a lot of fans and a lot of people who want to emulate his behavior. Anyone can buy a Hellcat, but again, Hellcats, I mean, you have to look. I understand this is a big thing for Americans, First Amendment, do what you want, freedom of everything kind of thing. As a Brit and an American, I struggle with that on a regular basis, okay? It's a side of my newfound nationality that I still struggle with, the idea that nobody should tell me what to do. People will break rules and do stupid things. But at the same point, you have to understand that sometimes rules are there to protect people from doing stupid things, but in protecting somebody from doing something dangerous, you are also protecting other people. When you crash your Hellcat, you're not just risking yourself and your $80,000 car or whatever Hellcats are going for these days. You're risking other people's lives. The same thing is true for gun control, but I'm not even going to go there, right? I'm just not going to go there. So, Dan, you're missing the point, love. The state of the autopilot was not engaged. But we are having a conversation about autopilot being in the news because it's being erroneously reported. And again, this comes back to being honest about how we report and how we cover things, right? The actual title of this video should have given the game away there a little bit. We want to have an honest conversation about how this technology is implemented, how people use it, how people view it, how people talk about it. And you can go along in your own little world and assume that everybody understands how autopilot works. But I'll tell you they don't. And that is the challenge. because the reason why people are talking about Autopilot in relation to this crash is because they jumped to conclusions. The reason why Tesla's share price dropped today, I bet, is because of this news, right? This is the reason we need to have this conversation. There's no framework. We can't hang things on this if we don't understand where the boxes lie. All right? So anyway, I love you guys. I had a really fantastic discussion with you. And I hope that you, if you go back, if you're just jumping in now and you missed the beginning, I hope that you go back and watch the rest of it, because I think you'll see where I'm coming from. This isn't about Tesla Autopilot being good or bad, because it's safer. It's proven to be safer. This is about whether we humans are safe, and we are most certainly not safe. And the ways we get around that is to make it tougher for idiots to use Autopilot and other similar assistance systems. We create legislations that mandate things like rearward-facing cameras or operations that are identical in enough ways so that anybody who has experienced a car with these features can get behind the wheel and understand how it works. Just like today, cruise control, lane keep assist have become pretty standardized. Where your indicators are, how you select the gear, it's all pretty standardized. Thanks so much to our $15 to $49 a month Patreons. You guys absolutely rock. Thank you to our $1 and $2 Patreons as well. Everyone who's the sub $15 Patreon levels. I don't talk about you guys very much, but I really do value every single person who donates to this channel, because without you guys, you wouldn't have just been able to hire 2 new people. We've just brought 2 new people on board, the wonderful Winter and also Katie, who's going to be joining us. They're both going to be joining us with slightly different roles in the social media department, because I suck at social media. Hopefully, we're going to be able to bring some more people on board this year, more camera people, more editors as well. But also, thank you to our $50 a month Patreon supporters: Regine Fellows, Gordon C., Paul Conway, Laura Sandbourne, Anthony Coates, Sean Ueda, and Tesla in the Gong. I love that name, Tesla in the Gong. And of course, thanks to our $100 or more a month Patreon supporters: John Lyons, Marcel Ward, Reggie Watts, JP Fagerback, Will Graylin, and Ian. If you want to join those amazing people, please do. There's a link below in the show notes so you can join up with Patreon, or you can send us some money through Bitcoin or Ko-fi if you would prefer. There's also a link to our Discord chat, so sign up, join in that chat, talk about what we've just talked about in this chat here. I would love to continue the discussion with you. Also, if you want to support the channel, you can do that by buying some swag from our store, and you will find everything from t-shirts and hoodies to cups and water bottles and even face masks. So support the store that way as best you can. I'll be back tomorrow with more great content. Until then, thanks for joining me. Keep evolving.